Welcome Trinidad and Tobago. This is the business of Carnival on CTV. With me is attorney at law Miss Carla Parris. The discussion today surrounding Carnival costumes designs. Miss Parris, welcome. First of all, who owns the designs?
Who owns the designs in Carnival costumes? Now, this is a really interesting topic, Rishi, and it really speaks to the question of whether or not in Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad, which is indisputably the mecca of Carnival, do we have proper business practices where this is concerned? So let's look at the Copyright Act. Section 5 of the Copyright Act, as I was explaining to you last week, speaks to original literary and artistic creations. And in that section, they speak to works of drawing or works of applied art. So Carnival costumes can fit into either of those categories. And the question is, well, who then owns these designs? And as I was also explaining to you last week, the Copyright Act is clear that the owner of an original work is the person who has created it. So therefore, if we look at those two elements, the designer is the one sketching the designs, putting together all the figurative elements and so forth on these designs. So therefore, it is clear that the designer owns the designs as opposed to the band leader from the outset.
There's this term industrial design being used when it comes to the designs of Carnival costumes. Explain what that is and, how is it used in relation to these Carnival costumes?
Okay, so some Carnival costumes may qualify for protection under the Industrial Designs Act. And this is because an industrial design is described as a work of handicraft, something that is a lot more visually stunning and so forth, elaborate. So therefore, we would be looking at costumes such as the costumes that are produced for the Mardi Gras. Think of those costumes versus the bikini and beads costumes. They're a lot more striking, aesthetically pleasing, a lot of more work and handicraft has gone into the creation of those designs. So if we were to look at a Carnival costume as an industrial design, then we'll be looking at answering questions such as whether these costumes are in fact original, because they have to be original to be protected, qualify for protection as copyright. But that would be the starting point, So Carnival costumes may be protected under the Copyright Act as a work of drawing, a work of applied art, and then under the Industrial Designs Act as an industrial design if it meets that criteria.
So do you think more needs to be done between the band leader and the designer? Because it seems as though the band leader may think that, I paid for this costume, it is automatically mine.
Yes, absolutely. A lot more needs to be done to make sure that these distinctions are clear, because a lot of the time, and not just in respect of Carnival costumes, it happens in music, it happens in fashion, in every area of creativity, persons have the view that because they paid for something, they automatically assume ownership of the underlying intellectual property, and that is not the case. So as I said, the designer is the first owner of the design. So if you as the band leader, you want to ensure, okay, I want to be able to replicate these designs, make modifications, adaptations, or more interestingly, enter into deals with third parties, global companies to reproduce these designs, then you need to enter into a contract with the designer where you would be buying out the design. That is the only way that you would now assume ownership, because the designer, unless they are an employee of your Carnival band, they would be an independent contractor. So that is how that situation would be dealt with, by virtue of a written contract which clarifies that you are now buying out my design for X price.
Does the person who are putting on these costumes have any say in what takes place there, or is it strictly between the band leader and the designer? And if we take a look at masqueraders on the streets who would parade the streets, they would have on costumes as well, and they would probably pay for it. Can they claim, who then has the rights for that?
Well, just as I was saying before, you're putting on, you've paid for this costume. This costume belongs to you as the masquerader playing in the band of your choice, but certainly you can't expect now to qualify for ownership or to assume some sort of ownership of the copyrights and the designs. You haven't created it. It's just like if you buy a CD, are you now the owner of the music in the sense of owning the copyright? Are you now going to promote this music on YouTube and say that it's your song? Of course not. There's a distinction between paying for a service or paying for a product and paying for your personal usage as opposed to assuming intellectual property ownership.
But it is okay then for the said person to give away the costume if they feel like it, as long as they don't reproduce what has been produced by the original design.
That's right. You can give it away. You could give it to friends. You can do it. It's your personal usage. But what I'm saying is the distinction between that and intellectual property ownership. You don't own the underlying copyright in the designs. That is what needs to be clarified.
And to avoid any mishaps between either party, we go back to having that written contract.
So the contract would be between the band leader and the designer in terms of clarifying ownership of the copyright in the designs and so forth. Not with the masquerader. The masquerader is simply purchasing a costume for usage.
Well, you're watching The Business of Carnival on CTV. Attorney at law, Ms. Carla Parris, giving some insights about what you need to know about the Carnival costumes.